Mr. Daly to ask you some questions.
Mr. Clark, can I ask you, why is it taking so long to deliver passports and supporting documents once they've been processed?
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. So I think it's probably important for me to give you a little bit of context and a bit of background about the service we offer and what actually happens, and the scale and size of the operations. So we've held this contract from 2020 when we took over, and in that time we've delivered 14 million items with a service level attempted within 48 hours of receipt at 99.6% in that period for that volume. There is a question about what happened, and I think you have to sort of unpack some of that information to understand a set of circumstances historically, because I'm pleased to be able to tell you that the system and the performance this year is incredibly robust and performing as it should do. As a business, we have constructed and set up a completely separate and bespoke offering for the HMPO contracts, separate to our existing networks, which meets the demands and some very specific requirements that were asked for us as part of the tender process. There was 216 separate service obligations that this network was constructed to meet. Now, the advantages of that separate structure is you get enhanced security. We've got advanced technology being used in that, and everyone who operates in that field, their training is solely focused on what we do for the HMPO. But there are some disadvantages of that completely separate network, and that's that it's less flexible to volume changes because it's a completely standalone environment. We spoke a minute ago about some of the volume, and we mentioned in those questions about the averages, and the averages being quite wildly different to what they had been. I would actually say that it's more than that, because an average is that, it's just an average. We've seen real record lows followed by record highs, so the erratic volume has been really quite significant, brought around by the pandemic. As a business, we worked really closely with the HMPO to make sure that we had the right capacity to meet the volumes and demand that were being put through to us. And as part of that, when there was issues, we took steps to recruit more staff, bring people on, get them trained. We permitted the HMPO to leverage other companies to deal with excessive volumes.
Can I just interrupt 1 second? And I do not mind listening to TNT's brief on this. It's in terms of what's happening, but I just want to get back to the question that you TNT have a contract to deliver passports and other documents. And so I just want to say that if you could give me the figures, that would be very helpful. I have, from my own constituents, I have numerous examples of delays in the delivery of those documents. So can I just ask you, why is it taking so long to deliver passports and supporting documents once they've been processed? What is the reason?
So if you actually look at the SLA that we're working with, we're achieving the SLA as a business. There was a 9-week period back in October last year when we had a wave of volume that came through to us that was totally unprecedented and not in the forecast that we were dealing with. And for that period, whilst we put in the right measures and made it our number one business focus to address that issue, we fell out of line of the SLA for a 9-week period. But ever since then, we've been operated as per the SLA. In fact, 97% of everything that we get is actually attempted and delivered within the 48-hour period that it gets passed on to us as a business.
Okay, so going on from that, if I were to ask you how you've performed against your service level agreement with the Passport Office, you would say?
That from the whole time from 2020, including the 9-week of impacted service that we had, the current performance level is at 99.6% service.
Okay. What is the issue with people who have reported to me about lost documents? So you could give us an idea as to the scale of that problem within the system.
Sure. So every network is vulnerable to some errors. And by having this separate bespoke network, we really do everything we possibly can to ensure that we have a robust procedure. And we work really hard to ensure that we minimise any of those impacts. And we do things like we have dedicated training for those individuals that are only handling these HMPO shipments. And we ensure that we follow up on any item that has been lost.
But can you give me an idea of the scale of the problem? I understand you're taking steps to address it. How bad is the problem of people's documents being lost?
So, and I think there's two different areas here. There's items that are initially raised as incidents of losses, and then there's actual losses. And just to put a bit of context around that, one of the recent accounts that just came through, a passport was reported as lost, but on investigation between ourselves and the HMPO, the delivery being made to a family member in that household, that actually halves the amount that have come through. They're actually successfully delivered. But there was 1,917 items that were initially reported as lost, with more than 50% of those actually being resolved.
Okay. Mr. Cole, I'm just going to come to you because I know you have to go at 11. And I have to be honest that I've been slightly open-mouthed regarding some of the evidence that we've heard here today. Could you just give me a flavour of what... This is a big question that takes more than the 5 minutes that you've got. But we're here talking about a system. What do we need to do as what's the takeaway from this committee that we need to ensure that these problems get sorted out?
Well, absolutely, and I'm very grateful to you all for addressing this, hopefully for the benefit of future travellers.
Yeah.
I'd say that communication is a very large part of it, and if on social media I've been trying repeatedly to remind people, by the way, your passport has possibly run out, to check it. And that message, I know that we heard that 5 million text messages have gone out from HM Passport Office, which is good, but clearly not enough. We, I hope, will not be in this position ever again of having a pandemic which effectively closes down outbound travel for the vast majority of people. The one aspect that I would like to see is if there's anything that can be done. I realise that I'm the only person who can remember the 1980s and 90s, but in those days, Petit France, the passport office there, you could, and there were most definitely problems with passport issuing from time to time. You took your passport along, it got stamped, you have an extra 6 months, have an extra year. Now, clearly, you cannot do that with present documents and the International Civil Aviation Organisation rules on those documents. But if there were some way of doing that, it would be strongly to the traveller's advantage. And one other aspect, which is just on children's passports. It previously was always the idea to have them valid for 5 years, 9 months maximum to give you credit for unspent time. There are reasons why you wouldn't do that with adult passports anymore, but there is no reason at all why you shouldn't do that with children's passports, which would ease some of the strain that we are seeing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Calder. Can I just come finally to Mr. Greig? We've heard what Mr. Clark has had to say regarding TNT's performance. Some have reported about the TNT actually have delivered a poor performance in terms of the indicators. I don't know, could you just give us a flavour of your view on the service that TNT have delivered and whether the Passport Office have had to employ other additional delivery firms to cover up for that poor performance?
So I would agree with Mr. Clark. I think that since the service issues that TNT had late last year, they have broadly delivered against their contract, and the number of complaints and losses we've had reported to us are not significantly above the industry average. They are about what we would expect and what is described in the case of the contract. We have, however, had to bring in other delivery firms to support us, but that is as part of the planning that we've done to deal with the unprecedented number of passports we're dealing with this year. So TNT are only contracted and only have the capacity to deal with a certain number of deliveries. That's 55,000 a day, I think, which includes deliveries for UKVI and other services. We knew that we were going to need more than that this year, and that's why we've brought on another delivery supplier who act as a kind of overspill and can pick up when we are outputting more than the amount that TNT can handle. And then we also are using Royal Mail to support the return of documents again, so that we can reduce the load on TNT. But that is not as a result of TNT's service failure. That is as a result of the fact that TNT were contracted to deliver a volume, and the volume has turned out to be much higher than that. And we've had honest conversations with them about their ability to deliver that going into this year, and so we've sensibly sought mitigations.
Okay. Mr. Greig, can I just ask, I do apologise, I was late coming into the meeting, forgive me for that. Can I just ask how long you've been in post?
So I joined the Passport Office in late January.
Okay. So where we are today, just so I understand, and where with these issues, are you telling us it is just circumstance that's created this problem, or is it management failures within the Passport Office that have put us into this situation? I appreciate there are steps going to be taken to address these problems, but where does the fault lie?
So I'll try and answer that as honestly as I can. I will answer it honestly, actually. So we are in a really unprecedented circumstance, and we are operating with a higher volume of applications than the system has ever dealt with before. And we are operating with them in a scenario where we are using 2 operating systems rather than 1, which was always the plan at this period, but wasn't the plan for this volume of applications and in the way that we are currently. And as I said at the start of the service, we have dealt with the vast majority of applications we've received in a very timely manner. I think we're at kind of 90% plus in under 6 weeks this year. So there, we are in an unprecedented circumstance, and we have taken a lot of steps to correct it. Are there things that I would do differently? Are there decisions that I've made that I would make a different way again? Yeah, absolutely. But I think by and large, we have managed the circumstance we've been in.
Mr. Gray, I'm not asking you that question. I'm so sorry to press you on this, but I just want to establish this. You are saying to us that management failures within the Passport Office have created this problem, aren't you?
No, I don't think I'm saying that.
So there are no management failures within the Passport Office?
So I think... So what I would say... So first of all, I'm accountable for the delivery of the Passport Service. And therefore, if there are elements of the Passport Service that aren't working, then yes, I am the person, along with my seniors and ministers, that are responsible for it. So I absolutely take responsibility for the outcome seen this year for the proportion of people that have had a difficult circumstance. And myself and my team are working really, really, really hard to resolve that. That is as a result of a very unusual operating environment and a set of decisions that we made in good faith, both prior to my time and during my time, to try and make sure that we handled applications as best we could during that period. Some of those decisions obviously will be reflected and look back and say that we might have done things differently. But do I think that the primary cause of what's happened is entirely decisions made by HMPO management? Then I would say that that's not the case. I would say it's a confluence of factors, but yes, we are responsible and accountable for them. And I absolutely think, and as do my colleagues, think very carefully and critically about the decisions we make.
So can I just ask you, we as a committee are looking at this, and we're going to consider and put forward a recommendation maybe. What evidence can you put forward to us that we should have any confidence whatsoever that the current management of the Passport Office are up to the task of dealing with this issue, getting rid of the backlog, getting back to the 3-week waiting period, all the things the Chair's talked about, that we want to see? What evidence is there that you're up to the job, that you can do it, that the structures that you have and the management in place are going to deliver the change that is needed?
So, can I just go back to the point I made? I'm not complacent about the issues that we've had, but as I say, we have dealt with 90% of applications within 6 weeks, year to date. And we have, and me and my teams, who I pay great tribute to, this is an organisation that is more committed to customer service, certainly in terms of people working than I've ever seen before. I've done a huge amount to do that. How can you have confidence in me? Because we are proceeding to make first of all, we are resolving these issues. As I said, our WIP is coming down by 60,000 cases a week. We are putting measures in place to ensure that people who need their passports get them, and people are getting them. We are working with our suppliers to improve their capacity. And for next year, we are already starting to generate a range of plans to ensure that once we get through the current set of issues that we're in, which I think will take some weeks, but will resolve themselves and will resolve themselves towards the end of the summer. Once we get to that, we will be able to put a much more stable plan in place for next year, where we understand what our operating systems are, we get the improvements done in the digital systems that we need, we ensure that we've got staff trained appropriately so they can flex between systems, we ensure that we're ready for demand, and we improve our customer comms, we do all sorts of things. And I'd be very happy to share that with the committee or to come back and discuss it with them at a later date so that they can make that analysis for themselves.